சார் ஜாயின் பண்ணிட்டேன். எஸ் சார். நான் இதுல லைன்ல இருக்கவா இங்க இதுல வரவா? கட் ஆயிடுச்சு. ஹலோ சார்.
உங்களுக்கு இப்போ ஹோஸ்ட் கொடுத்துறோம். மேல யூடியூப்னு தெரியும் பாருங்க. அதுல கீழே கிளிக் பண்ணீங்கன்னா அந்த லிங்க் இருக்கும்.
டிராப் டவுன் மெனுல காப்பி ஸ்ட்ரீம் லிங்க்னு ஒன்னு இருக்கு.
நீ எல்லாருக்கும் அனுப்பிடுங்க.
முடியுமா ஸ்லைட்?
தானே சார்? ஹலோ சார், கிறிஸ்டோபர் சார். டிராப் டவுன் மெனுல காப்பி ஸ்ட்ரீமிங் லிங்க் இருக்கு அதானே?
ஆமாமா, அதை காப்பி பண்ணி எல்லாருக்கும் அனுப்பிடுங்க. முடியும் போது ஸ்டாப் லைவ் ஸ்ட்ரீம் கொடுத்துருங்க.
ஸ்டாப் லைவ் ஸ்ட்ரீமிங் அதுலயே வருமா? நம்ம அப்போ கிளிக் பண்ற நேரம்
இப்ப வருதுல
வியூ ஸ்ட்ரீம் காப்பி ஸ்ட்ரீம் தான் வருது.
உங்களுக்கு என்ன போஸ்ட் கொடுக்கலாமா? கொடுத்தவனே வரும்.
அதான். ஓகே சார், அப்ப அதை காப்பி பண்ணிக்கிறேன். அப்புறம் வந்து ஹோஸ்ட் வந்து ஒரு ஹோஸ்ட் அப்புறம் கோ ஹோஸ்டா கொடுப்பீங்க சார்? எப்படி சார் அது?
ஹோஸ்ட் நீங்க யாருக்கு கொடுக்கணுமோ அவங்க நேம் மேல
ஒரு கேர்ள் வந்து எம்சி பண்ணுவா அதர் சைடுல இருந்து, வேற நம்ம இங்க இல்லாம.
ஆமா, அவங்களுக்கு கோ ஹோஸ்ட் கொடுத்துருங்க. அவங்க நேம் மேல வச்சு கிளிக் பண்ணீங்கன்னா மோர்ன்ற ஆப்ஷன் வரும். அதுல போயிட்டு கோ ஹோஸ்ட் மாத்திட்டீங்க.
ஓகே சார்.
இல்ல ஹரிணி புஷ்பராஜ்னு ஒருத்தவங்க இருக்காங்கல்ல மேம், அவங்க நேம் மேல வச்சு கிளிக் பண்ணுங்க.
இது வேற யாரோ சார், அவுட் சைடு ஐ திங்க்.
சும்மா உங்களுக்கு சொல்றதுக்காக சொல்றேன்.
புரியுது சார். ஆஸ்க் டு அன்மியூட் அப்புறம் நிறைய ஆப்ஷன்ஸ் வருது அதுல. அதுல மேக் கோ ஹோஸ்ட்னு இருக்கு அதானே?
அது மட்டும் கொடுத்தீங்கன்னா
அந்த பர்சன் மேல. ஓகே. எத்தனை பேர் கொடுக்கலாம் அப்படின்லாம் இருக்கு, லிமிட்ஸ் இருக்கா சார்? அது
ஹோஸ்ட் லிமிட் இல்ல மேம், ஹோஸ்ட் மட்டும் ஒண்ணு அவ்வளவுதான்.
ஓகே.
நீங்க தான் என் மீட்டிங்.
ஓகே சார். நீங்க லைன்ல இருப்பீங்கல்ல ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ற நேரம்?
இல்ல மேம், நீங்க ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணுங்க. இது கொடுத்துக்கோங்க, ரெக்கார்டிங் கொடுத்துக்கோங்க கிளவுட்ல.
ரெக்கார்டிங் அப்புறம் ஏதாவது ஒரு எமர்ஜென்சினா நீங்க அதுல இருக்க மாட்டீங்க, நான் கால் தான் பண்ணணும் இல்லையா?
கால் பண்ணுங்க.
ஓகே சார். Thank you so much சார். Thank you so much.
எண்ட் மீட்டிங் கொடுத்துறாதீங்க, அப்படியே லைவ்லயே வைங்க.
நான் கொடுக்க மாட்டேன் சார். Hello, Dr. Martin. Hello, nice to meet you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can
Yes,
you
I
hear
can
me?
hear you.
Yeah,
How are you?
Yeah, fine. How are you?
Good.
She is Dr. Pregalia, working in food processing department. She's one
Thank
of
you very much.
this event.
Glad to meet you.
Happy to see you, sir. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm making all the arrangements. Soon I'll join.
Okay.
Okay,
What
okay.
time are we starting?
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
Time is 9:37.
What's the time now there?
9:37.
9:37. Okay.
Yes.
Could we try in advance to try again? Let me just do one thing and then maybe in 5 minutes time we try again to go through the slides if they're moving.
Okay, okay. Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, Martin.
Hi.
Have a run through. Yeah.
Have you given me the rights to share the screen?
I want wait a second. I can make you as a co-host, okay? Then it will be easy for you, right?
Well, whatever. You can put me as co-host, then it's possible for me to post
Okay.
to share my screen.
Okay. Yes, I have done.
Okay, let me try to share my screen. If I can share it without problems, then we can go ahead. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Is it in presentation mode?
Yes.
Is it moving?
Yes.
Okay, that's all.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello, you have forgotten your academy. You should wake up. You've forgotten
Sharon?
Yes, ma'am, we
Yes,
can start.
yeah.
So a very good morning to one and all present here. I, on behalf of the entire Department of Food Processing and Technology here at Karna University, welcome all students, faculty members, our respected HOD Sir, Dr. Tangavel, and our esteemed guest lecturer for the day, Professor Dr. Martin Mckendare. So today we're here to learn more about nanomaterials and how it is used to make smart packaging. Being in the world of food, we understand how important and crucial packaging can get. And since the recent years, it has been untapped, but now researchers and scientists have learned so much about smart packaging. We can give our customers a real-time quality parameter check of what is going on underneath the entire packaging. So obviously, to give a more detailed explanation on this, we have our expert, Dr. Professor Martin Mckendare, who is going to be teaching, or rather expanding our knowledge in the entire topic. So before we dive into today's topic, let us remember that the Almighty is at the center of everything that we do. And may everything that we do, may we do it unto Him. So I would like to now call upon Ms. Leonardo Shruti, who is here the Assistant Professor at the Department of Food Processing and Technology, for the opening prayer. Over to you, ma'am.
Let's bow down our heads and pray. Our heavenly and gracious Father, we come to your holy presence this morning, Lord. We thank you for your endless grace that you have shown upon our lives and the hope we have in you, Lord. We lift your name high as you deserve all the praise and glory. Your word promises in Jeremiah 29:11 that you have a plan to prosper us and not to harm us, and also the plans that give us hope and future. What an assurance we have in you, Lord. Let that be a special grace upon each and every participant, both the NRI students and the national students, including our Professor Martin, who's going to orate in this webinar, Lord. We also pray for a stable network connectivity from the starting to the end of the program. We also pray that helps to have a deepened comprehension and broadened thinking, and helps us to understand about the what we are going to learn from the webinar, Lord. Through all these, let your name alone be glorified. In Jesus' matchless name, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am, for invoking the Almighty's presence for today's event. Let us continue. I would now like to call upon Dr. M. Pragalyashri, who is the Assistant Professor here at the Department of Food Processing and Technology, for the welcome address. Over to you, ma'am.
Very good morning. I am Dr. Praglyashri. Pleased to welcome you all who have gathered for the international webinar on nanomaterial-based technology for prolonging storage and shelf life of perishable foods, organized by the Department of Food Processing Technology. First and foremost, I would like to praise the Lord and thank Lord the Almighty, who has given the opportunity to conduct the webinar. And I would like to welcome our HOD, Dr. K. Tangavel, who has rendered his full support for organizing this webinar. Welcome you, sir. And I would like to welcome our honorable chief guest, Dr. Martin Mckendare, professor in chemistry, Cape Breton University, Canada. Welcome you, sir. I like to welcome the faculty from our department and faculties, researchers, and some students from various colleges and universities. I feel immensely happy to welcome the participants from Albania, Malaysia, Moldova, Nigeria, Ghana, Macedonia, Ukraine, Georgia, and Paraguay. Once again, I welcome you all to the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for that. Next, I would like to call upon our respected HOD, sir, Dr. Tangavel. And before we go into that, I would like to introduce him. Since having completed his PhD in the year 1977, he has published or has been publishing a number of research articles. And he is also the director for Center of Food Science and Technology. And now for the past few years, we are lucky to have him as our head of department here at Food Processing and Technology. And his interest lies in dairy and post-harvest technology, and he has in-depth learning about the same. So over to you, sir, for the introductory remarks.
Thank you, Sharon. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay. So very good morning to one and all. My dear colleagues in the Department of Food Processing Technology, research scholars in the Department of Food Processing Technology, and Dr. Martin Mckendare, a professor from School of Science and Technology, Cape Breton University, Nova Scotia, Canada. My dear participants, from different participants from Karunya Institute of Technology and Sciences, participants from different colleges in India and abroad. A very good morning to one and all again. It's a great pleasure for me to give a special address on this occasion of the international webinar, where our professor is going to talk about smart packaging technology for prolongation of the storage and shelf life of the perishable commodities. And I am really happy to note that more than 300 to 400, around 300 to 400 participants have registered for this international webinar. I'm very happy to note that not only from our institute, Karunya Institute of Technology and Sciences, from other colleges and research institutes in India and also from abroad. I'm very happy to note that. That shows the interest of the scientists, of the research scholars on the food packaging technology. And the topic is on smart packaging technology for prolongation of the shelf life of the perishable commodities. So we all know the food commodities. We are classifying into two categories. One is a perishable commodity, another is a durable commodity. So the durable commodity is the one which will have a shelf life of maybe 6 months to 1 year, 2 years, etc. Mostly the grains and all will be coming under the durable commodity. And the perishable commodity, mostly the fruits, vegetables, milk, meat, fish, etc. The food commodities, which will have a shelf life of maybe starting from few hours. So, for example, milk will have a shelf life of maybe 4 hours or 5 hours, depending upon the temperature conditions. And then fruits and vegetables, etc., maybe 1 day, maximum 1 day, 2 days, maximum a week. So that is a perishable commodity. And we all know, as far as India is concerned, India is number 1 or number 2 in almost in the production of the food commodities. We are number 1 in milk production, number 2 in fruits and vegetable production, and we are India. We are within number 5 in almost all the commodities. And the major problem is after the harvest, we are facing a lot of post-harvest losses. As far as India is concerned, we are losing almost around 15 to 18% of the fruits and vegetables produced is going as a waste. It's almost 18%. Suppose if a farmer produces 100 kg of tomato, then almost approximately 20 kg of tomato is going as a waste. So that is a post-harvest loss due to various reasons. And that is a major problem in India. And we are working for the solutions for reducing the post-harvest losses. And in terms of money value, every year, India is losing around 70,000 to 80,000 crores of rupees because of these post-harvest losses in foods. Of course, in perishables, it's around 20%, and in durables, it's around less than 10%. So that is the condition. So we are looking for solutions for reducing the post-harvest losses. And in this context, today, Professor Dr. Martin is going to discuss with us about the smart packaging technology for the increase in the shelf life of especially perishable products. So packaging technology is, of course, one of the technologies coming under the hurdle technology. So if we see technology for increasing the shelf life, then we have to look into the spoilage mechanism. Once the spoilage mechanism of a commodity is understood, then probably spoilage due to microbes or spoilage due to enzymes or spoilage due to any other chemical parameters or chemical quality parameters, constituents, we have to look into, and we have to have a stability, we have to have a microbial stability, enzymic stability, and chemical constituent stability. If we could achieve all the three stabilities, then ideally it is a ideal food preservation technology. We can preserve the food material for any number of days. But till now, there is no ideal food preservation technology. So scientists are working on these aspects, how to increase the shelf life by making a microbial stability, the product microbially stable, removing the pathogenic microorganism 100% from the product, then enzymic stability, removing the enzymes 100% from the product, and chemical stability. Chemical stability is a different aspect, making a minimum change in the chemical quality of the products. So that's the thing. So packaging technology is coming under the hurdle technology. One of the important hurdle, packaging plays a hurdle for the potential, the microorganisms, pathogenic microorganisms, which will prevent the microorganisms an entry into the processed or fresh food material. And this is the latest technology. So I'm very happy Professor Martin is going to discuss about smart packaging technology for prolongation of the storage and shelf life. And this is based on the nano material substitution also. So I think this is having a lot of application, and I feel really happy to have more than 300 participants for this international webinar. So I hope the deliberations and the talk by Professor Martin will be very useful, and you will have lots of carry home messages for your research and other things. And I hope you will enjoy this webinar talk on food packaging technology for the shelf life, for increasing the shelf life of perishable foods. So with these few words, so I welcome you all, and I wish the international webinar a fruitful one, and which will have lots of carry home messages. Okay, so thank you, Ananda.
Thank you so much, sir, for that message. You really enlightened us about the entire procedure throughout the
Sharon.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have a great pleasure on behalf of the Department of Food Processing Technology, Karunya Institute of Technology and Sciences. I have great pleasure in welcoming Dr. Martin.
Yes, sir, of course.
For this international webinar. Good morning and welcome, Dr. Martin. You can go ahead. Thank you.
Right, so now to introduce our speaker, we have Dr. Evelyn Renita, who is also the Associate Professor here at the Department of Food Processing and Technology. So over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Sharon. Good morning, everyone. I am profoundly delighted to take an opportunity to introduce our guest speaker for the day. He is Dr. Martin Mckendare. Professor Dr. Habel Martin Mckendare is a professor of solid state chemistry in the School of Science and Technology and former industrial research chair for mine water management at Cape Breton University, Nova Scotia, Canada. He was the chair of Cape Breton University Senate from 2017 to 2021, with over 25 years of research experience and over 150 scientific publications, 4 authored books, 3 edited books, 8 book chapters, and reflecting is the German academic background. His research activities have been around remediation of abandoned mines and smart technologies. Before joining Cape Breton University in 2012, Professor Dr. Mckendare was based at Technische Universität Dresden, Germany for close to 20 years, researching, among others, remediation technologies for mine water and uranium radioactive material, and metalloids in abandoned uranium mines. He has a network of collaboration with several academic and research institutions. He serves on many editorial boards and as an international scientific expert and advisor for a few foundations in Europe, Asia, South and North America, and Africa. Professor Dr. Mckendare has adjunct status nationally, example, Dalhousie University, and internationally, including Karania University in India and Northwest University in Republic of South Africa. He holds a habilitation degree, the highest attainable academic qualification in the German system, loosely equivalent to DSc, and a doctorate loosely translated to Doctor of Natural Sciences, equivalent to PhD. During his free time, he writes poetry and formally produced and presented Future magazine programs in science and music for local FM radio. We are greatly honored to have such an eminent personality with us. Now I would like to call upon Dr. Martin Mckendare to deliver his lecture. Over to Dr. Martin.
Oh, thanks very much for the kind presentation and the kind introduction. I feel very humbled. I hope you can all get me clear. So, first of all, good morning. It's around 1:48 here in Canada, in the Eastern Coast. So this is really a late night, and I'm happy that I can see you have more than 2 people who have registered. As already introduced, my talk today will be about the smart packaging technology in prolongation of food and food storage and shelf life of perishable foods. As you have already heard, my background is chemistry. I'm physical chemist with specialization in solid state. So I would say I went into food packaging just because I'm interested on the smart technology. I might not be very much aware of food technology issues. I think you are at a better position than I am, but I looked at the smart packaging because it's part of my area of research in smart technology. So apart from smart packaging, we also look at a number of things like smart wound healing, smart dressings, wound dressing, where instead of looking at the wound to undress the wound, the bandage which you put on a wound of a patient can tell you whether the wound is healing or the wound is infected. So we look at a number of things in terms of smart technology, and among those, one of them is smart packaging. We looked for a long time, we've been studying developing plastics, plastic coatings or plastic films that can prolong food storage and shelf life. Now that in most areas plastic is being decampaigned, we have moved more into developing degradable material, which are bio-based material, as well as edible coatings. But before I go further, let's start by introducing where we are. As I said, we're on the east coast of Canada, and if you can see, this is the whole Canada which we're looking at. From here to Nova Scotia to here, British Columbia. We are here at this Nova Scotia, the small one. If you can look at it, if I expand, you can see that this, and Sydney, where we are based on Cape Breton, is an island. We are connected, we are about 200 meters from the mainland Canada, but we are connected through a bridge. So when we are coming from the mainland, here is mainland, you are going, this is the Atlantic Ocean, that's the northern part, and this is the southern part, and here that's the bridge. If you can see here, it will tell you, welcome to Cape Breton. That means we are getting on an island, and this is a causeway where they've just put stones, and then there's a bridge then we're there. It's about 200 meters long. So although we are on an island, the farthest, not the farthest, where the farthest is Newfoundland, but we are outside in the Atlantic Ocean, not in the mainland Canada. Cape Breton is a melting pot of so many cultures, and you can see this is the type of the indigenous Canadians, and we usually call them First Nations. Formerly, they were known as Indians, but not as India as it is known from the Eastern Asia or Southeast Asia. These are called Indians. They are the First Nation. These are the people who are the original of this place. Almost everybody here is an immigrant except the indigenous. Cape Breton has a very long history of coal mining as well as smelting, making iron smelting as well as making steel mill. As a result, you have all cultures from all over the world. You have the European, you have the African culture, you have the indigenous, and you have the Afro Nova Scotians. These are where the the slaves, because when the slaves left USA, whenever they came into Canada, most of them, they had freedom, so they settled in Nova Scotia. So that's why we have almost all cultures. And one of the famous areas which you go is the Cabot Trail. If you have read about John Cabot, is the first person, the British person who walked here, and therefore the trail is named after him. We are in the city of Sydney, and in Sydney is known for the violin and the Scottish music. We are in Nova Scotia, and the majority of the people here are Scottish. Although I said it's a melting pot, we have people from all over, but the majority of the first settlers are Scottish and the French. Breton is a place in France. So the first people who arrived here were the French, and therefore it is called, they brought the name Breton, and now it is Cape Breton, although it is settled. This is part of the harbor side of Sydney, just to show you a little bit. And that's our campus here, Cape Breton University. It's not a big campus, but it's the second biggest university here in Nova Scotia after Dalhousie. So we are reasonably big, and we have satellite colleges international too. We have one in Dubai, and we have one in Cairo, and we have two satellite colleges in Western Canada and British Columbia, and one in Ontario. We have 4 weather climate system. This is the way it looks in fall and in summer. I mean, in spring and in summer. In fall, very soon you see it so colorful, all the trees will be changing red. And then by mid-November, we stop seeing the sun. We see all this is snow, and we have always to dig ourselves out, but you can also have fun on the snow. So that's just an icebreaker of just to let you know where we are. If you already know the place, I think it's a reminder of where we are, and maybe the place which you visited one time. It's a welcoming place, and we always invite people to come to Cape Breton. Okay, that aside, let's now start with food. The global food wastage is very high at the moment, and we see a lot of food is wasted. It is estimated by the World Food Organization that about 60% of the food, fresh food, which is harvested, particularly the perishable goods, 60% is the one which goes onto the table, but 40% is wasted. Most of it is wasted in the lifeline of the food production. And in the end, you have a lot of these landfills of food, which we could have saved, and we could have fed the people of the world, because most of the people in the world right now are starving. So we see that the food production, if this is the life cycle of food production, we produce the food, there are wastage at the production, we have wastage during processing, we have wastage during distribution, in the shops, and even at the consumption. So we have wastage all over. There's some wastage, particularly when we look at the perishable foods, as Professor already mentioned what perishable foods are. We can see that most of them, they are lost between here and here. When they reach the table, usually we eat them, but most of them, they're lost here. In summary, we have the food harvested or produced in the farm, and then it is in the storage, we lose something, we store, some will be processed, then you have the packaging and so on. Others will be sorted and then it will be packaged, stored, and then transported to the market. For people maybe like in India, you might not experience very much, but for people like here in the temperate region here in Canada, things like bananas, we eat bananas every day, but these bananas are not produced here. They are transported here. So the storage, where they're kept on the farm, the transportation, the packaging and the storage as they come to our market and to consume is very, very important. And that's where we see we are producing 100%, but what reaches the consumer is usually about 60%, while 40% is gone into the waste dump. This is the world at the moment in terms of food wastage, the statistics. You see that about 14 million tons is produced for the food. 2.4 million tons is processed. 0.9 is distributed. 4.2 is in the retail. And 11.1 is the one which we lose when we have the table, the leftovers and so on. So the production in the farm is where we lose most. Transportation and distribution is the one where we lose least. But the major concern is now in the retail. That's where we say the shelf life. When the things come to the shop, they have to be stored in the back store and then brought to the shelf for people to buy and consume. And that's where we start now losing a lot after the farm. So the retail in the shop alone, whatever comes to the shop, what we lose is very, very high compared to, we can add from processing plus distribution is less than what we lose when it comes to the shop to the retail. So that's a lot of loss. Similarly, we have developed habits, particularly in the richer countries where we throw a lot of food, which is very high, is second from the food we lose at the production in the farm and sorting and so on. When we look at that in terms of statistics, we see that 7 billion tons of food is wasted. This is at the expense of 820 million people all over the world do not have enough food to eat. If we could take that 1.3 billion tons not thrown to the waste, we can feed all the 820 million people. That's where the quest to find a way of reducing waste comes in. One of it is to see if we can reduce to the waste by packaging the material properly. So let's look at perishable foods again, just recapping what was already explained. Perishable foods, most of them, they will spoil very quickly. And they need to be stored in a proper way. For example, we have to put them in the fridge like this in order to keep them. And these perishable foods will be fruits, vegetables, dairy products, eggs, all sorts of those. But when you look at most of the poor countries, or most of the low economic countries and people who are less economically privileged cannot afford this sophisticated equipment for storage like a fridge, because the fridge is actually in places where they don't even have electricity. So how can we reduce the number of perishable, the loss of perishable food where the fridge are not there? Therefore, we can target the packaging. And if we target the packaging, we can reduce the amount of waste, loss of the food, whether it is in the storage or on the shelf, as well as when the people buy the food to take it home. That's why the packaging has a more advantages. It will not only prolong the storage and shelf life, but also the storage when the consumer buys the food product. If you look at that, there have been so many types of packaging which have been developed, but most of them, they protect the food mostly physically from physical damage. But the chemical processes or the biochemical processes and bacterial or fungal infection or fungal processes are not protected. How can we try to protect the food or to preserve the food without putting chemicals or without putting using sophisticated storage material? Some of the perishable foods which we have, you can see we have on the market, we have the vegetables, we have the fruits, we have the meat, eggs, fish, and we have the dairy products. All these are perishable foods which immediately when you harvest them from the production, you need to process them within a short time, otherwise they go bad. Sometimes we can put them in the fridge, but the fridge or any cooling system does not stop some of the chemical processes. It only slows the chemical processes. That's why many people will tell you that if you put fish or you put chicken in a fridge or in a freezer for a long time, the taste goes, because slowly the processes which are there, which could have gone bad, it doesn't mean they stop, they are just slowed down and they'll go bad. Similarly with the milk, you can put it in the fridge for a long time, but even if it is frozen, when you defreeze it, you'll find that the milk is gone sour. So let's look at the fruits. Let's look at, for example, if we are looking at the perishable food, and this is very important, we'll find usually we harvest it. Naturally, they'll be green, or particularly for people like here in the temperate areas, like here in Canada, where we don't grow bananas, they'll harvest green, and then they'll start ripening while they're in transport. And when they reach here, they'll be fully yellow, and then we eat. But the transportation, sometimes when the bananas, they come all over, like here we have bananas which are coming from the Caribbean, some are coming all the way from Africa and even Asia, including India itself. We have to preserve the food in order for that, for the bananas to reach here. Otherwise, the bananas, once they start ripening up, they will start degrading, and you see the degradation will go like that. Most fruits and vegetables, they produce what we call the pheromones, which are the hormones, plant hormones. And these plant hormones, they give the signal that time is now ripe for us to ripe, so that they induce some processes, chemical processes, which, for example, if it's green, there should be chemical processes which are taking place to turn it into yellow. And one of the hormones which the fruits will use is ethylene. Ethylene is a chemical which is C2H4, is a very small molecule, and most plants and vegetables will produce ethylene, and that ethylene will communicate to the other plants, so that those are to other fruits that time has come now, we have to ripe. So once that is produced, it is supposed to ripe. One way to prolong storage of fruits, including bananas, like when they are transporting, they try as much as possible to put ethylene scavengers, that any ethylene which is produced in the transportation system should be taken out. That's why the fruits will not ripe, can be transported all the way, it can take even 2 months without ripening the bananas. And yet when they're just put in this, they're just put in the shop, within 2 days they ripe. So this is, the ethylene will come into the system and it will affect a lot of other processes which will take place in a fruit. First of all, the ethylene, when it comes there, it changes, it enhances the pigment. It gives information to the mitochondria that the respiration should start. If the respiration has to start, the stored starch has to turn into sugar, and the sugars, that's why you see the fruit will start from being sour to sweet. And the same ethylene is responsible for degradation of the cell wall. That's why you see the fruits now get softer and softer, and then we lose them. So one way to target, to keep the fruits, the perishable fruits and vegetables for a long time, is to scavenge the ethylene. This is the ethylene molecule which I'm talking about, and so on. So you can see what will happen. The other thing which we lose a lot is not because it is gone bad, but it's because the colors sometimes change. But in terms of having the food, in terms of the quality, it doesn't change. For people who eat meat, usually when we go to the shop, we'll look for meat which is looking like this. That means it's fresh and people will go for it and buy. But if you leave the meat on the shelf without covering it, or even if it's covered, but if it's in contact with oxygen, it turns brown. And this is because there's oxidation of the proteins. One of the proteins is the oxomyoglobin, which is a protein which will change to the metalmyoglobin in the system. This is a protein which has iron in the mid, and that iron can be changing. If you have a lot of oxygen, can be changing from just iron 2 to another iron 2 by breaking this bond, which is here. I'll show you in the next slide. But if the oxygen is too much, that iron, you know, iron has very high affinity for oxygen. Therefore, iron oxidizes to become iron 3. So the protein here now, where it joins with the iron, it becomes iron 3. And the iron 3 is responsible for production of these radicals, the ionium radicals and the oxygen radicals. And these are responsible now for degrading more and more proteins. That's why it turns into brown. This is one of the processes which you take there, but you also see that there are lipids, other lipids which will oxidize. I was just talking about the myoglobin, how it is formed. Here's also myoglobin, where it is 2. If you have oxygen, not very much, it will be changing, and you can see that this is the bond which breaks, and here you see the bond will be breaking and coming back, and it will be exchanging. But if the oxygen is a lot, this finally, this iron here oxidizes to iron 3, and then the brown color changes in the meat. You can still eat it, it is still, it's tasty, but because of how it looks, usually it is thrown away. Nobody wants to buy in the supermarket. So we can look at this by preserving, by taking out the oxygen. That's why we produce oxygen scavengers to keep low oxygen in this, so that the oxygen, the proteins do not oxidize and change the color of the meat. Then we have the problem of transporting. One of them is, we have already talked, we have to put them in specific vehicles where they are refrigerated. but the refrigeration doesn't stop the chemical processes. It still goes on, the chemical processes. And therefore, you need to create an atmosphere which will not support, let's say if you have meat, which will not support oxidation. If you have vegetables, it will not support the production of the ethylene. You have to remove the ethylene out and so on. In order to have this transport operating, it's very, very expensive, that most economically disadvantaged places cannot afford to have such advanced vehicles. Supermarkets too, when we talk about the supermarkets here, you see the perishable foods are well stored in refrigerators and so on. But in reality, in underprivileged economies where even electricity, let's say some of the Southern African countries, and even now here in the United States, because of the climate change, we are seeing there's a lot of electricity problem because of the drying of the hydroelectric dams and so on. We can't afford this, and therefore we should find a cheaper way in which we can preserve the food, and we can also keep the food longer, both when transporting, without putting all this sophisticated material, by just well packaging, and we bring it on the shelf and we don't have any loss. So we can target this, and we can target this. That's where the motivation of the research we have been doing came from. Can we reduce the cost by looking at the packaging so that we don't have to have this expensive transportation mechanism and expensive storage mechanism? Just put them in the normal shelves, and then it can prolong the life of the perishable foods. So let's look at the traditional packaging. If we have to package the food, the traditional packaging, we have methods which will do containment. These will come in different shapes to improve the logistics and improve the efficiency. Let's say we contain them in the packaging so that we can transport these things very well. That's the one of the traditional packaging which we have. Or we can protect for preservation. For example, we put chemicals and we can protect against chemical and microbial contamination. We wash them and cover them so that no microbes come in, or reduce the water vapor and even the oxygen ingression into the packaging. Reduce the heat, protect the heat, so that they don't go. Even the insects, the parasites are a very big problem in food preservation. We can protect them from the dirt and so on. We also packaging, traditionally the packaging is just for convenience, because many people will go on the shelf and look at how good it looks, and then that means this is the good product to carry, to buy. So the consumers will look at that, saving time. Instead of picking one orange after the other, if it's already packaged, you just get it together as a pack. Instead of picking one fish after the other, you find the fish is already packed, you just pick a package. It is also used for communication and marketing. You have the brand logo, you have the ingredient list. Nowadays, many people are very, very much conscious with how many calories they are going, if they are eating something healthy. So they'll have the packaging, will have the information of the nutritional factor, how the food was prepared, or suggesting the price and the expiry date. They'll see best before. So what are the driving forces now that although we have already the traditional packaging, which are now calling for us to be looking into the smart packaging? In other words, what is really a motivation to look into that? We have new demands. The population is growing. As we know, we are now more than 7.5 billion. And this is beyond the carrying capacity of the earth. And therefore, we are living artificially on this earth because we are held by technology. Otherwise, you can see that the population started growing after the Industrial Revolution of 1800. Before that, the population of the world never exceeded 2 billion. But after the Industrial Revolution is growing, so we have the population to feed, where it doesn't allow us to lose anything. There's also the change in the consumer practice. Many people now say, oh, we need to eat something which is fresh, not very frozen. Frozen food does not taste. We also have changed in the production processes, change in how we sell the food, the environmental care, and healthier and safe food. That's what we're looking at. So these are the new demands which are there in the food industry. In the other side, we see the technologies have grown. We have biotechnology, we have nanotechnology, we have TIC. All these are coming in, which are now telling us, okay, we can meet the demand by the new technology. And this demand, since we have new technology, why don't we look at the smart packaging, where it will extend the food shelf, it will keep the food safely, or supervises the food safety and quality. It will interact with the food to enhance the flavor, or to maintain the flavor, to maintain freshness. And it can also communicate to the consumer to tell you, so, okay, this food, although it is looking like this, is still good. When we look at the intelligent packages, they are in two forms. We have what we call the active packaging and the intelligent packaging. What are the difference between these? I'm going to explain now. For example, if we have food, we look at active packages like the one which will protect and preserve. These are the active packaging. That means this packaging will actively interact with the food which we have. And if it interacts with the food, it will help to keep the food in good condition. Then we have the intelligent packages. These will communicate with us. It will control and inform the state of the packaged food or the environment surrounding them to the people. While the active one, they will interact and extend the quality, and it will tell us the properties of the food and keep the quality intact. So we can see that in the process of making this either intelligent packaging, usually the intelligent packaging will put them outside of the package, while most of the active packages will be part of the food, or they might be the food packaging or the food coating itself. The surrounding, that's where usually we'll see the active material. So you have the active material in forms of polymer, you can have them in forms of particles, or we can have all sorts of that. We can put head space here where it is the air exchanging in order to communicate to the intelligent packaging component of the material. So if we look at the smart packaging, we see that we have the intelligent packaging and active packaging. Under intelligent packaging, we have the antimicrobial. That means which will kill the bacteria or even the fungal, so that the food doesn't degrade biologically or doesn't, to reduce fouling. Then we have the MAPs, and then we have the antioxidants and others. We look at the others like the emitters, which will produce carbon dioxide, because under carbon dioxide, most of the bacteria will not grow, but also oxidation will not take place. Or we'll look at material which will capture the water, the carbon monoxide, the carbon dioxide, the ethylene, oxygen, water, and even the flavor. There are also materials which have been developed with nanoparticles which are self-heating, which are self-cooling, or sometimes they are microwave active. While in the intelligent packaging, we have the indicators which will tell us whether the food is fresh or it is microbial damaged, or there's gas damage, gas exchange, the integrator is gone, the time and temperature, or the thermal abuse, and all those to tell us. This can be in form of biosensors, electron noise, and so on. So we can even have the data barriers, carriers, which will tell us the information like the labeling, which you have the barcodes and so on. They can inform us what the situation is. So in our study, most of the examples which I'll give you now, you concentrate on these emitters because we did a lot of research and these are the ones which are going to come. And some of the antimicrobial as well as antioxidants in form of food coatings. While here, we looked very much, we developed a lot of sensors. I will not go much into the details because I didn't know the exact audience, but if you have questions and specific questions to specific methods, we can get into discussion where we can go into details. But for this, I'll not go into the details because I think we are from so many different fields and the area which we are interested is where we can go into details. So we have the classification of these food packaging based functional nanomaterials, which we use in order to make this smart packaging. We have those which will improve the packaging. That means the physical equipment.
Sir, open. Door open, no?
Oh, excuse me. Are you talking to me?
No.
Excuse me, are you talking to me?
No, sir.
Okay.
You can continue. Yeah.
Then we have the active packaging where we see actually the materials will have the active, the nanomaterials will have active interaction. Let's say we have the gold or the silver nanoparticles or the metal oxide nanoparticles, which will usually either work on absorption of gases or work on as antimicrobial activity. We also use them for different sensing when it comes to intelligent materials. These are, then we can look at the smart packaging, where we are looking at smart packaging, where we incorporate this material inside the different material which we have, like the nano sensors and so on. Or we can also look at material which are biodegradable. They are smart, they are biodegradable, they will enhance the flavor and so on. So if we look at the classification of the nanomaterials which we have used, for example, we have the nanomaterials in form of nanoparticles. These we have looked at the dendrimers, we have looked at the layered biopolymers, we have looked at the liposomes, the hydrogels. Then we have looked at also at the inorganic material. We have looked at the carbon nanotubes. We have looked at the mesopolar silica. We have looked at the gold shell, the iron oxide shell, and the quantum dots. This material, we have incorporated them into different plastics. And we have incorporated them not as part of the food which we eat, but in terms of the material which we will cover it. And we will have put them in most cases that there can be exchange of gases between the food and the material, can interact with the material, whether for absorption or whether for degradation of the ethylene gas or the change of oxygen into water so that there should be no oxidation of the proteins in meat. We have done that. You can look at this. We have different types of nanoparticles here. We have the nano shells, which will come into the groups of these shells here. I think these were the nano shells which we made from gold. I think they were gold nano shells. We have the mesopolar silver. These are gold nanoparticles. These are also gold nanoparticles. These are nanorods. We have all sorts of nanoparticles which we produced. And we have incorporated them differently. We could immobilize them in the plastic, and we used, most of it was the CPP plastic, which we managed to put, and then we could test how long different foods could work in. Then we looked at another type of nanoparticles, which were very promising, and with these which I became a fan of them, are the Nano Composites. And we had two types of Nano Composites, the polymer-based Nano Composites and nanopolymer-based. The polymer-based is, we used mostly the ceramic material, inorganic and organic polymers, inorganic and organic hybrids, polymer bilayer silicates, and so on. And here you can see some of these are most of them, that's the silicate-based nanomaterial. Here's the TEM, here the TEM image, and here's their SEM image. So it's the same on two different systems. And then we have looked at the metal oxides that we have been producing, for example, the magnetic nanoparticles, the ceramic nanocomposites like the BioCell, and the ceramic nanocomposites. So these are the examples of some of the polymers, and we have also used them incorporating into the plastic. Then we have the immersion. These we used for both coating into the plastic as well as making what we called the edible coating material on the food. And most of the edible coating material which are based on this have been put particularly on foods. We tried them on apples. We have tried them on vegetables, the cabbage, the Chinese cabbage. And I remember when we did, it wasn't our group, but another group demonstrated the same, using the same principle. There was an outcry on the social media, people saying, oh, the food in the supermarket is being coated by plastics. I don't know whether you saw those images people were sending out, but in most cases, those are edible plastics, edible proteins, which are usually made from the nano emulsions. I'll come back to this in details just to show one of the methods of how we did it. So we have the polymeric micelles where we have this tail, which is hydrophobic, and we have the polar head, and we can have nanoparticles inside, encapsulate them. For example, if we want to protect, let's say we were developing plastics, and the problem with the plastics when we are developing iron-based oxygen scavengers, the iron-based oxygen scavengers will turn red because the oxygen will absorb on iron and form iron oxide. Iron oxide is the rust which turns red. So people were seeing the packaging getting red and they think the food is getting bad. But then we decided to encapsulate those iron nanoparticles in nano emulsions, and then they were inside, and therefore they were not seen outside that they are turning red because they are encapsulated. But the gases were able to pass through and get into the iron and oxidize. So you have different ways of how to look at it. You can try to make it as a hydrophilic system, hydrophobic, where it absorbs water, or you can have any matrix which you want. Then we have the nanocrays, which was very interesting because we used the nanocrays mostly incorporating into plastic, and the nanocrays would enhance and protect physically the food, as well as sometimes they could catalyze in the production of carbon dioxide, catalyze in production of, in degradation rather, of methane, or of ethylene in fruit packaging and so on. And we used most of these nanocrays not on their own. Most of them we had to develop something like the emission, but we could use the cray and the polymer together to make them normal dispersion, or maybe we could make them in a cray polymer dispersion, or we would make them into this exfoliated dispersion, cray dispersion, where you have the cray in the polymer. So we could use the polymers which we used were like the chitosan, we have used lignin, and we have used the cellulose. So we have used different biopolymers. We haven't used any of the petroleum-based nanopolymer because of the decamping of the plastic. We are trying to develop this new bio-based material for packaging. So we are looking at lignin, chitosan, cellulose. These are the ones we are looking at, as well as looking at some proteins as our polymers, biopolymers. Then we have used the nano sensors, which we have developed most of them because I was talking about making the carbon, the magnetic nanoparticles, so we could make the cobalt ferrocorbic oxide, cobalt ferric oxide nanoparticles, which are magnetic. And if we put a gap in between with a gold nanoparticle on the other side, the gold nanoparticle will have an antibody functionalized on the surface, which will identify the E. coli or any other bacteria, while the magnetic particle will also have another antibody. That means any E. coli which will be around that material, if we put it on the slip, this slip here, from this, it will come in between, and therefore, because this is a semiconductor, there'll be change in the impedance of the system, and therefore we can detect that there is bacterial infection. So this food is E. coli contaminated. We have also used the same using what we call the radio frequency identification sensors, where we have developed the arrays using different arrays where they can communicate with you. Most of them like the whole sensor-based magnetic material. And we have also looked at a number of other material which on their own they can transmit, just like the same when you go into the shops. If you buy a material, you'll find there's a circuit, and when you come across the door, if you haven't paid or you have paid and they haven't deactivated it, because of the magnet at the entrance, it will detect that there is something. So we could put a whole sensor and the magnetic system, and we can communicate that remotely to our computer, and then we know that this is the amount of oxygen, or this is the amount of carbon dioxide which have developed in the storage of our fruits, or this is the ethylene gas levels which we have. So that is the radio frequency using the nanoparticles, the whole sensor, using thin films material. We have also used piezoelectric materials to develop this, where we use the SAW, surface acoustic wave. We have also used this is not radio frequency. We have used also the gold nanoparticle for identification of oxygen content. You find that if you have a gold nanoparticle and you excite it with UV light, there'll be fluorescence because there'll be activation. This will be active, and because it has to lose the energy to come back to the lower state, it will release the energy in form of emitting in form of light, which we observe as fluorescence. So this one will be emitting if there's no oxygen, because if there's oxygen there, that energy which is excited here is absorbed into the oxygen. As a result, you will not see the fluorescence taking place. And in our system, if you have something like that, you always see the emission of the fluorescence. That means there's no any oxygen. But if oxygen is developing in the system, that means you can see, okay, this is not sealed, oxygen is coming in. You find there's quenching of the fluorescence immediately is produced, and therefore you don't see it. Then we have looked at the mechanical and physical application of the food packaging. Most of it is used to improve the mechanical and physical properties in terms of the food nano coating, which I already mentioned. And the food nano coating, it will form a thin layer on, or a thin film on top of the food itself. And in most cases, we have used what we call the edible coatings. Then we have looked at the nano laminates, where the nano laminates is a small film which will contain 2 or more layers of a nano layer of a given material to strengthen the physical and the chemical. Most of it is to form the oxygen and the water barrier so that the water doesn't get into the system. And I already talked about the nano clay, which we could either integrate into the biopolymers, which would be used for food coating and so on. This usually they're integrated or embedded into the nano inside the packaging material to improve the physical characteristics of the packaging. So let's look at what the edible packaging, edible coating, packaging or coating on fresh food, what it does. So we'll coat a thin film around the food. For it is usually the food will lose the aroma. Let's say if you have well-ripened banana, you smell it from very far. To avoid losing that aroma, we put a coating here so that there's no aroma lost or volatile aroma lost. It will keep the food fresh and it will maintain the water content. It will not wilt because it has a coating which will protect from the gas. We can see, we can control the exchange of ethylene gas or oxygen or carbon dioxide. We can, antioxidants, we can put antimicrobial, we can add nutrients into them, we can add flavor and so on by just putting the coatings. Usually the coatings which we have used are protein-based, made from peas protein. We could take the pea protein and put it. And we can avoid the loss of moisture or even make them into a membrane that would allow moisture to come in, that the fruit remain turgid and doesn't wilt with time. So what happens with our nanoparticles, our nano material, we would put them around, then if let's say the microbial or the mechanical stress comes, they'll hit the surface and go back. And it can selectively, if it's a membrane, we make it in a form of a membrane, the flavor and the current come in or lose the carbon dioxide and other material will come back. And most of them, as I said, they could be, they could be sugar-based, that means cellulose, lignin-based material, which we could use, or even protein-based. So we have the food here, then you have a thin film coating, and this will be the edible material, and this will be the phase which we have. And we see that in this case, we have different types of edible coatings. We have the polysaccharides with water-soluble properties, so there will be derivative of cellulose, as I said. Some of them are starch, the pectins, chitosan, aragonate, the gums, and so on. We have used the lipids, the fatty acids, the glycerols, the waxes. We have used the essential oils, and we have used or a lot of extracts from other plants. The protein ones, as I said, we have extracted the milk protein and coated it on different material. We have looked at the soya protein. We have looked at the gelatin, microfibril protein, and the zein protein. We have looked at that. One of the things which we have done, the types of the coatings which we'll find, not we have done, but which we'll find, we'll have the coating which are the oil in water droplets, which these are the nano emulsions, or we have the oil, the water in oil, water droplets dispersed in the continuous oil phase, or the bicontinuous, where we have the micro domain of oil and water interspread within the system. So this, we have taken the theory which is already available. We use surfactant, we use water and so on, which will help us, let's say, when we have the emulsion, one of the emulsion which you see where oil and water mix very well is an example of milk. So you could look at this, by looking at this diagram here, you know where you can get your material. So if you have water and water, you have less surfactant, you produce the nano emulsion. If you have more, then you have liquid crystals forming from the surfactant, then there'll be different type of nanoparticles from this. So these are the way we have been doing them for making the the coating. So we'll have the oil, we'll put the emulsifier, we'll shake them closely, and then they'll make entrapment of the oil and the water, and then we make the coatings on the food. Having come to that, the concluding remarks, one of them, we say, with the increasing awareness of food safety, nutrition, and health, there is existing demand for new technologies to improve quality, quantity, and safety of food products. I was leading today, as I was preparing for this presentation, in US alone, the food packaging, the smart food packaging, has a market of $1.3 billion in US alone. And the Southeast Asia, which is the growing population right now, they expect it to be even more in the coming 3 years, which will exceed 13.4 billion in terms of the market for the smart packaging. We have been looking at the smart packaging. They have very high potential. We have been focusing on using nanoparticles in this smart packaging, and worldwide is increasing because they have versatile properties. We don't need to get a lot of space in order to package them. They go direct into this. Some of them can be eaten, some of them can remain there. However, we still have a lot of room for investigation because there are a lot of things which are unknown. What about the nanoparticles if they accidentally mix with the food and we swallow them? Those things have not yet been studied. From our side, as a chemist, it is exciting to produce these nanoparticles, put them in a plastic and test. However, we don't know if we produce those nanoparticles, this is laboratory work, but if we come on the industrial scale, what will be the economics involved? Will it remain cheap? Will it be cheap? Will it be expensive? Will the people afford it? All those economic part of it, we don't know. So these are my concluding remarks for this talk. If you have any question, I would gladly entertain and have a discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. That was rather inciting, and I'm much assured that all of us have gained a lot. So now, as sir said, the forum is now open for questions. If anyone is shy to open their mics, you can put it up in the chat box and we can put that up. So any questions, anybody? So we have a question. So the question is from Harini, and she asks, what foods can we shrink wrap? Like what packaging can we use for shrink wrap?
For what?
So basically, what foods can be used a shrink wrap packaging can be used for what kind of foods? So that is her question.
I would say we have been looking at fruits, vegetables, and meat. We haven't gone very far. We wanted to look at bakery products, which we haven't looked into them. We just tried a little bit with the oxygen scavengers in bread, but I would comfortably say you can use them on vegetables, you can use them on food, meat products. We haven't used them on the dairy products like cheese or ghee and so on, no. So on fruits and vegetables, we can use them.
Right, I hope that clears your doubt, Harini. Any other questions that we have? So we've received one question. Yeah.
There's a question which says, what is the current scenario of life cycle assessment of nanoparticles used in packaging? As one of my concluding remarks is on the safety. I've talked about if you swallow the material, we don't know. Similarly, we are now at the production. We haven't even at the research level in the lab. It hasn't even gone to the industry, some of the things, although some are already available in the industry, particularly when it comes to intelligent packaging. But these are new products which the studies are still on, and the life cycle is being determined. At the moment, I myself or my group has never done it, and I've never seen anything in the literature. Maybe this is one of the areas which there's room for further research.
I hope that clears your doubt. Any other questions that we have? We have still time. The forum is open for faculty and students alike, so you can have questions.
Hi, greetings from Ukraine. Sorry, I'm without the cam. Thank you very much. And I have one question. What can you say about some laws or legislation about the packages in your country? The short one.
I would say at the moment, the registration which is there now is banning of single-use plastic. That's where the most of the focus is. Mm-hmm. And at first I was working with the plastics. That's why I said I've moved from plastics, looking at the bio-based polymers as the packaging material, using cellulose, lignin, and so on. And this is at research level. For a person like me as a chemist, I'm very much interested and engraved in the chemistry than looking at the policy. Once we come up with something that is going to the market, I think at that time, when we are trying to get that, is when the policy will come into them to say, oh, this is the regulation of nanoparticles in packaging material. At the moment, there's none.
Thanks, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions?
I can see there's a hand up.
So we have a question up in the chat box. It's from Dr. Pragaliashri, and she asks, what is the maximum level of silver nanoparticles that can be used for packaging materials?
That's an interesting question. I haven't worked very much with silver nanoparticles. Silver nanoparticles are very, very good in terms of being antibacterial, but they have also cytotoxic effect. As a result, we have worked very much when we look at the nanoparticles we have worked with are usually the gold-based nanoparticles and chitosan, which are polymeric, biopolymeric nanoparticles, not gold, not silver. So I would be cheating you if I try to answer about silver nanoparticles.
We can see a few more questions.
Yes, we have a few more questions. So it says, is it economical in terms of cost to produce metal and organic nanomaterials for usage in food packaging?
I think there's a question before that. There's a question from Harin, which says, is nanoparticles, nanotechnology good for food packaging, and there is any disadvantage? As I said, we still have a lot of areas to talk about. I would say it is good because we have proved with our studies that it can prolong the shelf life. But the disadvantages, they should be there because it can't only have advantages, but we don't know because we haven't investigated them. However, we should know that most nanoparticles, we tried the carbon nanotubes, and we know that carbon nanotubes can sometimes behave like silicon, where if you accidentally breathe carbon nanotubes, they can cause cancer in the lungs. All those are things which we haven't investigated, but we know that there is nanotoxicity of some nanoparticles. So we can't say at the moment, because our area has been concentrating on developing this material. I think there will be other groups which will look at whether there are some disadvantages, particularly in the toxicity area. I don't know whether that, Aline, if that answers the question. And from Prabhu says, is it economic in terms of cost to produce metal and organic nanoparticles for usage in food packaging? I would say organic nanoparticles are proving to be cheaper than metallic nanoparticles in terms of synthesis and so on. However, to say the cost itself in terms of making of food packaging, metal nanoparticles, they are more expensive. Because let's say if you get gold nanoparticles, formation of gold nanoparticles, you have to produce in masses. And you know gold is very expensive. We buy, let's say we use gold chloride. We buy gold chloride about 50 grams, which will cost us almost $1,000. And that 50 gram, if we go on the mass production, we will need a lot of gold, and therefore it will be very expensive. But if we want to buy chitosan, it's very cheap. Or if we want to buy aragonite, it's very cheap. Similarly, if we want to go and buy lignin, the only problem with these bioorganic substances is sometimes they do degrade very fast compared to metallic nanoparticles. And also, most of them, they are sugar-based. Once they start degrading, they facilitate bacterial growth. I don't know whether that answers the question. Here's another question which says, how to identify presence of nanoparticle in food after packaging? Kindly tell a method other than SEM edicts and so on. I really don't know what to say about this, because we use SEM edicts. TEM is very rare because it's a transmission process. And because of being a transmission process, a thick layer would never give us any tangible results. Identifying nanoparticles in the food, we can use UVVs to identify if you can find some absorption of the nanoparticle. If it's non-absorption of that nanoparticle, we can use it. But to say something other than that, I wouldn't speculate, because I use SEM and TEM in order to analyze. So there's another question which says, what are the kind of nanosensors, type of nanosensors in food packaging? I showed one of the nanosensors where we use the magnetic nano-gold sensors. We have used what we call the electric nose, where we use the we use the nanowire. So we have used the different nanowires as sensors, because they are semiconducting nanowires. We have this. We have used the silicon nanowires. We have used carbon nanowires. All these, because they have the semiconductor characteristics, we could get. We could manage to make sensors from them. The principle is just simple, because we could functionalize, let's say if you want to get a gas which is produced in the food, if there is oxidation, usually most of the food will produce most of the food, particularly fruits, will produce the hydrogen peroxide. We could make the hydrogen peroxide by functionalizing a gold nanoparticle, or create what we call the gold arrays, where we will functionalize it with the palladium, and if we functionalize it, it can sense the gas which we want by looking at the functionalization. So that is one of the sensors which we use, and we have used the soil surface acoustic sensors. All of them, they use similar but different technologies. Aren't nanoparticles recovered from bioresources better for use in a single-use plastic, as they are tendency to degrade faster in our favor? I would say it depends with what nanoparticles you are talking about. Bioresources, I've seen so many papers, and I've supervised some students looking at using different reductants from plants and so on in order to produce nanoparticles. But it is at very, very small scale. You can't produce them in masses. That's why, let's say if it's metallic nanoparticles, you still have to use the normal precursor, which is a chemical based. And to say they degrade faster, well, that's an advantage as well as disadvantage, because what we need is to stay in the packaging material longer than degrading into the food. If they degrade, they will start spoiling the food themselves. We are adding now a chemical to the food which is not supposed to be in the food. So it would not be good. Single-use plastics, we were talking about single-use plastic, and the nanoparticles are totally different things, because single plastic and the nanoparticles, we embed them into the packaging material. Single-use plastic itself is a packaging material itself. So what we are looking at is, are we embedding it into a single plastic? Does it degrade in the single plastic, or are we embedding it in a biopolymeric plastic? That's what we should look at, the difference between biomeric plastic and single-use petroleum-based plastic. These are the two different things, because the nanoparticles, we can embed them in anything. Does that answer the question?
Sharon, one more question is there, I think. You missed it.
No, ma'am. Sir covered everything. Yes. Yes, we've covered all questions, ma'am, in the chat box. So, do we have any more questions? Right, so I believe that all our doubts are rectified, and I thank you, sir, for that. And we can now look forward for the thank you. And this will be done by Dr. Chandrakala ma'am, who's the assistant professor here at the Department of Food Processing and Technology. Over to you, ma'am.
So a very good morning to everyone. So a warm and graceful morning to our most valued speaker for today, Dr. Martin Mckendare, Management Committee, faculty, my dear friends, and everyone gathered here. So it's my privilege to propose a vote of thanks speech and acknowledge the contribution of those who work really hard to make this webinar a grand success. So I, Dr. Chandrakala, on behalf of Department of Food Processing Technology, Karanya Institute of Technology and Sciences, the entire fraternity of the institution, first of all, extend my most sincere thanks to the Almighty God for making today's event a resounding success. With His blessings and grace, we are able to make this event what it was. So on behalf of my institute, I extend a really heart vote of thanks to our Dr. Martin, who spared his time from his busiest schedule to deliver this lecture. Today, we had an opportunity to hear your thoughts, and this will surely be going to encourage us in our future events. I immensely thank to our HOD, Head of the Department, Dr. K. Thanguvel, Department of Food Processing Technology, Karanya Institute of Technology and Sciences, for being the catalyst that stimulated us to do the best and standing as pillars of strength. With a deep sense of appreciation, we thank our loving teachers for their untiring efforts. So regarding this webinar, in total, we had 13 international participants from various organizations like Uganda Coffee Development Authority, Masas University Malaysia, University of Arkansas, National Agency for Public Health, Ghana Atomic Energy Commission, National Authority Albania, National University of Itapua, Paraguay, and National Agency for Food and Drug Administration, and so on. And we have 203 national participants from various institutions in India, namely Anna University, Tamil Nadu Agriculture University, SRM University, KSG College of Arts and Science, Panariaman Institute of Technology, Nagaland University, Vellore Institute of Technology, and many more. So we totally had 219 internal participants from Karanya Institute of Science and Technology, being our students, staffs, and faculties. I need to mention my deepest sense of appreciation to Dr. Emlyn Renita for her efforts towards organizing this webinar and assisting the related activities. I also extend my thanks to all the staff members for this enormous cooperation within the organization to make this event successful. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We can now close the session with a closing prayer, which will be carried forward by Ms. Shirley, final year BTech. Over to you, Shirley.
Let's close our eyes for the prayer. Our gracious and loving Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for your beautiful presence that was there with us throughout the session, O Lord. Lord, we thank you for your grace that has given us the opportunity to be a part of this international conference. Father, Lord, we thank our HOD sir and all our faculty members who have made this a possible event. Father, Lord, we bless our speaker and all our participants. Let your love and mercy follow us throughout. I ask this prayer in the precious name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you everybody for being a part of this session and making it a grand success. Thank you again, Dr. Martin. for being with us and expanding our knowledge on this topic, and for rectifying all our queries and doubts. Thank you so much. A gentle reminder to all the students, especially within Karuna Institute, that you have to be registered for the event to receive your certificate. Kindly do fill the feedback link, and you have to be present during the entire session so that you receive your certificate. And for all the students outside of the institution, do fill in the feedback link. It will be posted in the chat box to receive your certificates, and you have 10 minutes to do so. So please do fill the feedback link. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.
So thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Ma'am, I have posted the feedback link in the chat
Yes,
box.
Sharon.
Yes, yes. All, requesting all students to kindly fill that up.
சொல்லியிருக்கேன் அப்படியா பாட் பண்ண போன் நீ எடுத்துக்கோ, ஒன்னும் ப்ராப்ளம் இல்லை. உன்னோட என்கிட்ட எடுத்துக்கோ, எனக்கு பெரிய இதெல்லாம் கிடையாதுடா. அவ்வளவுதான். கரெக்டா இவங்க வந்தாங்க, கரெக்டா அவன் ஃபீட்பேக் போட்டான். கொஞ்ச நேரம் மேத்ஸ் பேசினாங்க. இது வந்து ஃபுட்டோடைய இதுல நம்மளுக்கு மேத்ஸ் இல்லைன்னா அவங்க போர் அடிச்சிடும். பண்ணி முடிச்சிடணும். நம்ம சைடுல நம்ம லேட் ஆகும்.
இந்த மாதிரி அப்ளிகேஷன் மட்டும் கொடுத்துட்டு சர்டிஃபிகேட் தானே எடுத்து போறோம். ஜெராக்ஸ் எடுத்து கையில வச்சுக்கோங்க. ஓகேனா செலக்ட் ஆயிட்டாங்கன்னா வெரிஃபிகேஷன் தான் ஒரிஜினல். இது என்ன உங்களோட டிசி கிளிக் பண்ணுவாங்க. டிசி எங்க இருக்குன்னா
அப்படி படிக்க போறாரு.
ஏன்னா ஒரு எல்எல்பி கோர்ஸ் ஜாயின் பண்ணிருக்காங்க. அங்க டிஸ்கன்டினியூ பண்ணி அங்கேயே இருக்கலாம்.
படிக்க போனாதான் டிசி வேணும்.
சரி ஓகே மேம்.
ஓகேடா. குட்டு பாய் உன் செருப்பு இங்க இருக்கு. அது எப்படி செருப்பு இல்லாம அங்க சுத்திட்டு இருக்க?
ஷூ போட்டதுனால கழட்டி கழட்டி வச்சுக்கலாம் மேம்.
அது மனசாட்சி இல்லாதவங்க என்ன வேணாலும் பண்ணுவாங்க. நம்மளை பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் எல்லாரையும் நம்ப கூடாது. நிறைய கதைகள் வரும்போது கஷ்டமா இருக்கும். ஆனா இப்ப நான் சொல்லல, இப்ப என்ன இம்மாருன்னு சொல்லும் போது நம்பி இருப்பாங்க. இப்ப திருப்பி வந்து எங்களை அனுப்பல உள்ள வைக்கிறாங்கன்னா அதுக்கு என்ன கதை சொல்லியிருப்பாங்களோ நமக்கு தெரியாது, சொல்லிட்டு போறோம். ஆனா நம்ம இம்மாருன்னு சொல்லும் போது நம்ம ரெண்டு சைடையும் யோசிக்கணும். நஷ்டமாவே இருப்பாங்களோ அப்படிதான் நம்ம என்ன பண்ணணும், கிட்ட போகாம நம்ம இல்லாம இருந்தாங்கன்னா என்ன பண்ணணும், அதை வச்சு அது ஈஸியா கண்டுபிடிக்கலாம். ரொம்ப நாளே ஏமாத்த முடியாது.
Ma'am?
Yes.
Your mic is on. Your mic is on. We can hear you.
Wait.
ரொம்ப நேரமா உங்க கான்வர்சேஷனை கேட்டுட்டு இருக்கோம்.
ஐயோ, so sorry. எப்படி ஆன் ஆச்சு?
தெரியல. அதுவே கேட்டுட்டோம்.
So sorry.
Emlyn ma'am.
Yes, Sharon, you please wait a minute.
Yeah. Are we posting the link in YouTube, the feedback link?
Yes, but we couldn't open it. So that is some
Yeah,
issue.
I also posted, but you can't open that thing.
Yeah.
Link.
I talked to CTC people. We'll see.
Okay.
Get a name list, you can send it to the WhatsApp.
இது வந்து வெபினார்
கிளாஸ்
Sharon, can you share the feedback again?
On chat box? Yes.
In chat box.
I just shared it.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Sharon, we can wait for a few more minutes, okay?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.